Today we're gonna talk about Mythic Bastionland. Cold Misten hills, beast witsome and fell, in holdings and havens the vassals and well. Seers know the all, the start and the end, myths hushed aloud to which truth must bend. Aside, vagabonds on snake-lined trails, knights render these stories wrenched from their veils, for the oath, for the glory, through sorrow and ache, the city, that quest of which no knight can make. And so begins Mythic Bastionland, the latest tabletop RPG from McDowall, the creative genius behind games such as Into the Odd and Electric Bastionland, and a very, very well-known figure in the indie RPG scene. The game is about knights. The players they play a company of knights, and the game is about the knight's journey. The atmosphere is Arthurian, like a mythic medieval period. It is not directly linked to any historical or semi-historical background, such as taking place in Britain. But instead, there are tools with which the game master or referee can create their own mythical realm, where magical stories of tragedy and heroism can flourish. The game system itself is very much created for an open world playstyle with a sandbox, if you will, where emergent stories can evolve from the player's choices. In contrast to more narrative, plot-driven games, where the referee needs to have kind of an overarching story prepared for the players. So who are the player characters? Well, they are knights, all of them. And the system to create your knights is based on McDowall's other systems from Into the Odd, where it's very rules light. The character has 3 basic attributes, virtues they are called in Mythic Bastionland, and they are vigor, clarity and spirit. And you roll up a number between 2 and 18. You also have something called guard, which is hit points more or less, and you roll a d6. So, and this is your starting attributes. You also create a knight, and a knight are like a template. There are 72 in the book, and they are very flavorful and also very different from each other. Every knight template has a title, such as the True Knight, and there is something about each knight that gives them enough for the character to fill in the gaps, so to speak, but also create a theme, if you will, around which you could create your persona in the world. So your knight template will give you your starting equipment, your special ability, your horse, which are all different, and not all knights are armored to the teeth. Some of the knights in the book are actually more, if you would compare it to fantasy setting, more like rangers or even rogues with stealthy abilities and other ways to interact with the world. So the word knight in this context is broadly used. There are no skill system in Mythic Bastionland. Instead, if there needs to be a check, one of the 3 virtues are used. And you roll under their values with a d20. So it's very, very simple. As for character development, this is quite interesting. There are really 3 different parallel paths of development for your character. One is something called ranks. When you adventure in the game and you do good stuff, you gain glory. And when enough glory is gained, your knight is advancing in their rank. But this is a very social currency, so to speak, because you don't grow more powerful on your character sheet. It is more that you are becoming more and more worthy to take on greater tasks, greater responsibility in the realm, such as ruling a warband or controlling a small holding and surrounding area. Then you can also advance by getting older. So there are 3 ages for a knight: young, mature, and old. And the default, I would say, is that the players start with young knights. And the young knights, they could be a bit rough around the edges. They haven't really developed much of they haven't entered maturity. So what happens when your knight ages, and there are rules for that, is that when they go from a young knight to a mature knight, you roll all your stats again. And if you roll higher than your previous one, you exchange it. So you can only get better. The sad thing is that if you become old, you do the same process again, but this time you keep the lower value. So each knight is having an arc naturally built into the system, where you start as inexperienced, you mature, and this is your prime. And then you decline again. Maybe having a high rank as a knight, controlling a lot of land and have a lot of influence, but physically and mentally you're not the same knight as you were when you were younger. The third way you develop your character is through combat. There is a system where you gain scars, and these can only be gained via mortal combat and surviving it, of course. So I told you before that there was a value called guard. It's you start with a d6 in this, and these are like temporary hit points. More on that when we talk about combat. But if you ever get a hit and your guard is reduced to exactly 0, not below, then you gain a scar. And there is a certain scar table where you roll, and there is like a 50-50 chance or something that your guard will actually improve from the experience permanently. So it's interesting. If you choose not to fight a lot, then your guard will not improve. So I thought about this, and I haven't really seen something similar in other games where you have 3 very distinct ways of developing your character, and they are done mechanically in totally different ways, and they influence the game also in totally different ways. So yeah, I thought it was cool. It was a fresh take compared to the more classical experience-based and level-based or skill-based improvement systems. Okay, let's talk about combat. So Chris McDowall's games are famous for not using a to-hit die. There is everyone always hit, so to speak. So you roll your damage rolls immediately. And so the process is, when you make an attack, you roll your damage rolls, your damage dice, and you could have more than one, but usually you have one that is based on your weapon. And if you have a shield, it could give you a bonus die. You could also have a bonus die, for instance, if you had some kind of advantage or special ability or something like that. So you roll one or a couple of dice, and then you choose one of the dice that becomes the damage die. Usually you will pick the highest, but it's not always the case. More on that later. The other dice are not used, but they can be. There is something called gambits in Mythic Bastionland, and this is fresh. You don't have the gambit system in Chris' older games. So every die that you are not using to deal damage, if they are 4 or higher, you could use that die to do a gambit. A gambit is a special kind of additional bonus to your attack. It could be something like dismounting someone, rendering the weapon unusable for a turn, gaining an extra move. A gambit can also add 1 to your damage roll. So there are like 7 or 8 different ways you can use gambits. And this creates a tactical layer to the battle that is surprisingly deep once you use it. For a system that is this rules light. Anyway, after you've decided how much damage you deal, then the defender gets to reduce that damage based on their armor. And they have an armor points from 0 to maximum 4. And any damage that goes through are applied to that character's guard. And any damage that is have reduced the guard is then spilled over until on the base virtue vigor. So vigor is like the when you're starting to take vigor loss. That's actually when you are wounded, so to speak. If your vigor goes to 0, you're slain. If your vigor is ever halved from one single attack, you are mortally wounded, and that means you're out of the battle. And unless someone helps you within an hour or so, then you are dead. But it's a way to end the fight for a character that isn't always by dying. So I thought that was interesting. There is also something called feats, which is another system that is completely new for Mythic Bastionland, and it creates an interesting push your luck mechanic almost. That is another layer on top of the battle system or the combat system. So feats are tied to one of your virtues. So you have 3 different feats that every knight could try to do. Your vigor allows you to do a smite feat, which gives you a bonus d12 to a damage roll, or it could also cause you to or make allow you to attack many opponents in a single die roll. The clarity will give you something called focus that gives you a free gambit without spending a die, and spirit will give you the possibility to cancel a damage die rolled against you. The thing is, once you have activated a feat, and after it has taken effect, you must roll a save. against that attribute with a d12. If you fail, you become fatigued, which only means that you cannot use any feats for the rest of this combat encounter. So it's kind of cool because it if you have a higher score in one of the virtues, that gives you a better chance to fight with that kind of feat. So if you have a high clarity, for instance, then that knight is more able to be a trickster fighter. They can do a lot, create a lot, use a lot of gambits. If you have a high spirit, then you are more defensive because you are able to cancel dice. And if you have a high vigor, then you're able to more often hit harder. There are also rules in the book for battles where different units of soldiers fight each other. They are very, very easy. They are basically the same as individual combat with a few small exceptions. So in the system, you are often put into situations where the knight maybe have to command a unit of soldiers to defend or attack something, and it's very, very elegantly done, but still gives a bit of options. What do you do when you play Mythic Bastionland? Well, when you play Mythic Bastionland, a lot of it will revolve around a concept that is called myths. The myths are kind of like small, self-contained storylines, often named evocably, something like the troll, the plague, the blade. And in the book there are 72 different myths, from which, when you create your realm, you usually select only 6, and they will influence the world as the player characters travel and explore, etc. And it is a very, very innovative system. More on that later. There is no tracking of resources or money. It's not that kind of game. It is expected that the knights have supplies for most things, and could also get hold of more common equipment or services without any hassles. If they need to purchase something or acquire something that is more valuable or rare, then the system suggests that they need to maybe barter for it, maybe a trade with something they have found and valuable item, or maybe perform a service of some kind, help them out, gain favors. That's cool because that forces the players to be creative if they want something from someone, in contrast to just having enough gold. So let's talk about world building in Mythic Bastionland. This is really the most unique world building system or world running system I have ever seen. It is clearly built as a rather low prep system for the referee. You can pretty much roll up a realm, map it out with everything from rival knights to castles and their internal relationships, factions, and mystical landmarks of different kinds. So you can do that very easily and very quickly as well. There's also the system to run the world. It's very unique. So I mentioned before the myths, and the myths are placed hidden on the map by the referee before the game. And the myths activate naturally when the company of knights travel, using a simple table. I will show you the wilderness table, and on a roll of 1, 2, or 3, every time they travel to a new hex in the world, a myth will activate, and it's higher chance that the closer they are to a myth, that myth will activate. But there is always a chance that any of the myths will activate when they travel. And when I say that the myths activate, I mean every myth has an escalating number of steps, 6 of them. Each step is called an omen, and each omen kind of starts usually very innocent, or just something strange is happening, or signaling something odd that will not generally tell the players a lot about which myth this is. But the next time the same myth is activated, then omen number 2 happens, and there might be some kind of conflict, dilemma that the knights have to resolve in some way. And when you get to the end of a myth, the last and 6th omen, it is usually the climax of that omen, where the knights are kind of forced to resolve that myth one way or the other. The thing is that is very interesting is as you referee a game like this, you are for once also kind of, you don't know how things will happen. You don't know exactly what the things will evolve when they travel or explore, because the myths will happen in different orders and with different escalating level, and so what actually happens when you play at the table is that a story emerges with encounters or scenes taking place in which the player characters interact, and one thing leads to another, and one thing maybe connects to another. So I think here is something magical that Chris McDowall has created that I haven't seen anywhere else. And I would not be surprised if we will see in the future in other role-playing games iterations on this system, so that might replace the classical random encounter tables that have been used for 40 years in role-playing games. Sometimes the problem with too sandboxy or open world games could be that the players are a bit lost. They don't have any clear direction. In Mythic Bastionland, you don't really have that problem, because all the knights have sworn an oath, and that oath involves, among other things, to seek the myths. So from the get-go, when in doubt, seek the myths, because that is what you are sworn to do. And where are the myths? Well, you could stumble upon them just by exploring, but there are also rules or guidance in the game who knows what. So, for instance, usually if you if you travel to a holding or a village of some kind, the local ruler will know about the closest myth and its general direction. So they could point the players in that direction. There are also something in the game called seers, and the seers are a funny bunch. The seers, they know everything. They know all about the past, and they know about the future, what will happen, and they know about every myth in the realm. And they actually live in the realm, so you could travel to consult a seer, for instance. However, the seers are very, very weird and strange, otherworldly entities that are difficult to communicate with, and they might talk in riddles. They might they might have physical difficulties actually communicating with you due to being entombed or living under a lake or some stuff like that. So it will create a very strange twist. But it's usually a good idea to visit a seer if you happen to be close by, because you could gain some insights. Maybe you don't understand everything that the seer is conveying to you, but it adds to the mystery and the feeling of magic in the game. So the result of everything is that in Mythic Bastionland, it's a marvelous system for creating an open world. Stories will unfold organically, almost by themselves, without the referee having to do any heavy lifting. And the players will always have something to do, and they will never feel stuck. I can also show you a map I made. So this is the realm that I created for our own game, and it took me maybe an hour or two to map this out and take the notes. I have the notes on another paper, but you don't really need a lot of notes because Chris's writing is very, very evocative. He's very, very good at writing in the way that triggers your own imagination and connecting storylines in your own head. The cool thing was, when we started to play, I showed this to my players, and I told them, yeah, this is where you're going, and you are coming from distant lands, but you can decide of where you want to enter. You could enter from the sea on any coastline hex, as if you want, or you could come from one of the borders. You decide. And they decided to start to land here in this village, and they did, and they talked with the ruler there. There was some stuff, the rumors they heard about, and then they started to travel the land around it, and things started to happen, and a lot of things happens while traveling and encountering people. And the interesting thing is, I think about what would happen if they would have chosen to enter from one of the borders instead. I don't know. I didn't know. I didn't plan something particular for that one. I just used the system as given in the book. So I cannot stress this enough. I think, let's go to my final thoughts. What is Mythic Bastionland? Well, it's a rules-light system, but the combat is surprisingly tactical with the feats and gambit systems. the system is extremely innovative as to the travel and exploring hex crawling mechanics, and I would not be surprised if this will create a new kind of trend in role-playing games, building upon this system that Chris has designed. Who is Mythic Bastionland for? Well, if you like the style of kind of Arthurian, mythical, medieval, if you have fond memories of Pendragon or games like that, then Mythic Bastionland is perfect. It is also for if you want to play knights, who doesn't? And I also think if you are interested in game design, then you must take a look at this. Who is it not for? Well, if you are a game master who is not comfortable in improvising, if you want a lot of detail pre-planned, then I think the system and you will have some problems getting along, because it is kind of built around the concept that the referee gets some information, but then are supposed to let their own imagination run with that. So if you are not an improvisational kind of game master, referee, then I think this well, it could be a challenge. It could be something that you actually, this could maybe be the best system to learn that kind of style of refereeing. I'm just saying that this is not a system built for linear plots or storylines or very carefully planned arcs. It's just not. So I can absolutely wholeheartedly recommend Mythic Bastionland. I think it's a fantastic product. It is something of the best I've seen in design of role-playing game design in many years. I think Chris McDowall has outdone himself, and that is saying something. And if you're interested, where could you get this? Well, the Kickstarter is over. I think at the time of recording, I think you could still get a order via BackerKit. And if you have want to read more about Mythic Bastionland, you could go to Chris's blog, bastionland.com, where there are links to a free quick start PDF to check out the rules for yourself, and many of his other products as well. Thanks a lot. My name is Tom.